Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur's Life. I'm here today with an agency prodigy, Mr. Ashton Shanks. Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, good, man. Good to be here. Good to be here.
Really cool having you on. I want to dive into a lot of why you have done the stuff, what you have built over the past. But let's kick it off with a question about why you are actually growing faster with your agency than most other players out there.
Yeah, I think one, it comes from a place of probably demonstration to the market. I think as compared to most agencies, I've really kind of built a career around the results I can produce and the reputation I've built around that, and frequently demonstrating that through trainings to the market. And that's really allowed us to have, I think, more of a presence that creates a sense of certainty to prospects when they come to us, is that they've already kind of been demonstrated that I know what I'm doing, that our team knows what we're doing.
All right. So basically, it's showing how you do it. And this way, people gain trust that you can actually deliver. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that and then just time, I've been doing that for, probably going on 5 years now, and so in this space, man, there's just people come and go all the time in the internet space, and so even just the fact, a lot of people that even come to us now, it's like, "Hey, I've been following you for years. Seen you since
Right.
2019," and so that's just kinda developed over time.
That's true. So let's talk a little bit about how you got started. You're still in your 20s, right? How old are you now?
Yeah. 27 now,
All
27
right.
now.
All right. So you said you've been building the agency for what, 5 years now? Is that true?
This would just go into we're going on 2020 is when we started. So
Right.
the agency is actually fairly new, but my reputation building started when I worked at a company called Traffic and Funnels. And so that's when I really started showing up and demonstrating value and training the marketplace, but just for when I was an employee.
Interesting. Okay. So is this agency the first venture that you are building as a full on entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's the first one that I've been all in on. I think like most entrepreneurs, I've had a lot of little projects, from cell phone repair
Right.
company, computer repair company, a lot of random projects, but this is definitely the first one that I've been all in on. Founder, real company, things like that.
So why did you get started? It seems like you had a great career, but then you did make the jump and started your own stuff. I want to speak about the and well, listen. Actually, I want you to speak about all the challenges and why you did that stuff. But first, let me ask you about why you actually moved. Why did you take
Yeah.
that jump?
Yeah, it's funny. It's anticlimactic, like a lot of entrepreneurs that just had this deep-seated drive and vision for what they wanted. Mine just actually happened more out of necessity. I was working at Traffic and Funnels, and we were operating really well. I was running their marketing. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and had some family health things that came up to where I needed to move back to Missouri to be near family. And so that just forced me to transition out of the job. And at that time, people had pretty consistently always asked me to run their advertising and their paid media. And so it's just a matter of me starting to say yes. And so really it was just, I need something to do. I need money to pay the bills. And then it just, yeah, kind of cascaded from there.
Well, that's pretty cool. Okay, out of necessity, that's good. So a lot of people they say that when you start a business, it's all about the vision, right? Um, I think a lot too many people talk about visions, but then they're stuck in their job, right? It's all theory. A lot of entrepreneurs actually they do get started out of necessity, and then they create the vision around that. How was it for you? Like, is what you're building right now, is that something you're very passionate about? Is it more something where you love the game of being an entrepreneurship? You don't really care about what you're building. How does it feel for you?
I think I learned to appreciate the game of entrepreneurship. In the beginning, it was just a passion for what I did. I loved advertising, I loved marketing. And so I loved what I was doing. But then just it found a way that, okay, what I was doing, I could actually find a way to pay my bills with it. And then as time went on, I think I really started to understand the game of business. I've always been a big thinker and a big vision caster, but it was never around of just what I want. And it was so finite. I found in my life that it's in moments where I'm just doing something. I've always created the vision of I want to now be the best at that thing that I'm doing. So even when I was in a warehouse working and sweeping, I was like, I'm going to be the best warehouse sweeper this world's ever seen. And I would start learning how to optimize myself, make it faster, make it better and cleaner. And so I think I'm just naturally that person of whatever I'm doing, I create vision around it. And then that leads to the expansion. But entrepreneurship in the game of it was something I actually never really wanted to be until I was in it and I started to see the opportunity and the potential and the risk and I started to love that game.
You love that risk too?
Now I do. In the beginning, I did not. I was a very risk adverse person. At some points, I was having 3 jobs because I was always afraid of having that risk side. And, I'm married, have kids. And so I had to make sure I was protecting it. Now I think I've learned the game in a better way to where it's not as emotional and
Hmm.
removing the emotion out of the game and just going, now, how can I make better moves incrementally? I started to love that side of it.
What role does emotions now play for you? So we touch upon visions, right? And having a vision for most people is a very emotional thing. They become very attached to that, and there's a lot of good things about that. You are talking about distancing yourself a little bit. Um, Tell me about that side, because I've been an
Yeah.
entrepreneur for 20 years, and sometimes I've been a wreck. Right. So I like that idea, although I don't think it's for me. Tell me more about how you do that. How do you distance yourself and how do you benefit from that?
Well, one, I would say I am definitely not perfect at it. But I do think it's actually something more recently that I've been studying more because having stresses come up and obstacles come up in my way recently of like, man, starting to have that fear set in of I am so attached to this thing that I want. I have this picture that I want, but I'm starting to face obstacles that are holding me back from it. And in the book, actually, Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday is a great one on this, but he was talking about the difference between being afraid and being fearful. Fear is good. Fear drives action. Fear is what can protect you in moments of danger. Being afraid is typically the thing that cripples you. You stop
Mm.
making decisions, you stop taking action. And so that whole saying of like the only thing we have, to fear is fear itself is that concept of fear is the thing that can drive action. But if you don't control it, you don't put it in its place and allow you to make wise decisions, you can turn into being afraid, which then is you cowering in a corner. And so emotion in itself, you have to decide what you want. And even in times for business owners everywhere, you probably understand. Like, if I say, do you want to be a shepherd or do you want to be a lion? Do you want to protect your team and everything you have going in this perfect picture of what you have? Or do you want to be a lion that takes action, drives things forward? And sometimes that requires you to distance yourself a little bit from being so in the weeds of I have this picture perfect thing and going, can I navigate to this to where maybe it's not this year, next year, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I can still accomplish that route and I'm not so attached to the path it takes to get to it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I love it. Um, the shepherd or the lion. That's cool. I've never heard that. I'll quote you on that if you don't mind. And
Absolutely.
also, is that, did you come up with that or did you read about this? Because I love a good book.
Yeah, no, I unfortunately nothing from that. A lot of it just came from that feeling of, as a founder, a lot of times in businesses, it's like we can try to protect everything. And when we try to protect everything and keep it exactly how it is, that's when we can run into problems or businesses run out of money, is just because they've been trying to protect what they have rather than taking ground or just making decisions or just moving forward. And so it's something that I've had to really decide, even when you're dealing with team or staff, right? It's like sometimes you'll have people in your organization that need to move on. And it's like, you understand that that is the right path for your company, but you're also, I want to mentor, I want to protect, I want to be everything to all people. And that's when you can fall into trouble.
That's very true. I want to tell a story here very quickly that I guess fits here. When I was running a social enterprise for many years together with my wife, right? And so we worked a lot on very visionary things and with the United Nations and a lot of things that were meant a lot to us, right? And we had one core employee. She was basically running the operations. I guess nowadays I would call her like a head of operations or even a COO, right? And one day she was calling me for a meeting, and we sat down, and she said she needs to move on. She needs to quit, right? And I was literally, I was about your age, I think, back then, right? I'm 40 now, and back then I've been building this for quite a while, but obviously I myself was not that experienced back then. And so she was sitting there with me telling me that she needs to quit. And I was going through like all the emotions because I wanted to stick to that status quo.
Yeah.
I wanted her to stay around because I was counting on her to help us building this. So I was in tears there. I was the worst leader. I was just sitting there. I had like tears rolling down my cheeks. I was asking her, I was screaming at her, and nothing obviously helped, right? And that was one of the weirdest moments of my life. And it was exactly of what you just said. I was not ready to move on. And things did get, I guess, better, obviously different. We
Yeah.
had to progress, but at that moment it was super, super hard.
Yeah, it's
So
not easy.
yeah, it's not. It's definitely not. All right. Well, tell me about a moment where you were struggling. Tell me about a moment you were struggling and want to look into your own growth and have other people learn from those moments that really make you an entrepreneur. I feel right because there are some people who start something and they're successful, and that's it. I call it a project, right? I call that probably getting lucky, right? As not a lot of very successful serial entrepreneurs who can do it over and over again. So tell me about a moment where you struggled and how you got out of it.
Yeah. So I think the first one I remember when we started Heman, we started off and we grew really, really fast. We were very fortunate. I think we had hit about 118 grand in monthly recurring revenue in like 80 days of starting the business. And so our biggest problem was not like client acquisition, it was like hiring staff to fulfill. And so basically one of my first attempts to do this was I was like, okay, I need high quality talent because I have very high standards of excellence for our company. That's how our company grows. Reputation is everything. And so when I started, it was like, okay, I'm going to go to the biggest agencies I know. I'm going to try to hire their best people. I'm going to pay them a lot of money. And that's how we're going to continue growing. And so that's what I did. And when I went out and did that, I had got one of these guys in from a very large agency that I know people in the agency space would know, but it's like I got him, he was getting paid a lot of money. And there was this one particular account that was like our prized account inside of the agency. It was the one, our biggest one at the time. And I was the one running all the media for it, but we were getting to the point where I just could not be in fulfillment. I had so many other things to start focusing on. And it took a long time for me to really build a relationship with them to trust that anyone else on my team could run it because they're very hard set of, Ashton's got to run our stuff. That's how it goes. I eventually got them to a point where they would trust and allow me to let someone else run the account. I had slowly brought this person in, had them do audits, start sharing feedback so that he could prove authority. And they got to the point they're like, all right, let's do it. And at the time, I think we were spending like 60K a day in ad spend. And so I got this new person over it, told him exactly what to do. Here's the rules that you need to set up. Here's how you can launch. We were using back then. Oh, it was an amazing time. It was 2020, right? So every store was blowing up. And so I got him in, told him what to do. And we were using accelerated spend campaigns at that point with bid caps. And I had woke up the next morning to tons of Slack messages, fire alarm alerts from the client, right? And they're saying, what's going on? We spent 30 grand by, it was like 6 a.m. already. Like, what's going on? And so I get on and I realize that this person had not followed my instructions to the T. And did not set the bid caps correctly or the rules correctly. And it just spent a crap ton of money. At that time, I had already been sick for like 4 days with like 102, 103 fever. I was feeling terrible, hadn't eaten in days. And I'd get in, and this whole thing that I was expecting to finally have this weight lifted off my plate had now turned into a dumpster fire. And I had to end up refunding the client the ad spend that we had wasted. And as a new company, that sucked. But then just all the emotional stress of like, now I felt like I didn't see a way out. And I think that was the first time when I described to friends my first panic attack I've ever had, where it's just hyperventilating, cried, just no idea what to do. And in that moment, it was one of those things where it was a very simple question, but it was just the thing of, is this going to be what breaks me? And if it isn't, then it does not serve me to wallow in this pain or this emotion. And so I need to figure out a way to just flip it around because whatever this I'm feeling right now is not going to carry me to tomorrow and it's not going to fix anything. And I think that was probably one of the core moments of just going, is this the moment I give up and toss everything away? If it's not, find a way to fix it. You just got to move on. You've got to fix that because in entrepreneurship, that will not be your last moment. It will not be your last moment. You're going to get it every month. Some people maybe every week. Like we're the soap opera of all businesses. If you ever watch Suits, I love the show Suits, right? Because it's like every week the company is going down somehow. Someone's going to do a takeover or something, right? And entrepreneurship is the same way. And if you cannot figure out how to stabilize those emotions quickly, you're never going to last.
What's your go-to routine to actually stabilize those emotions? Do you have one?
So the first thing is writing everything out. I like to write a list of like, what is everything that is currently happening in my life, environment, whatever. What are all the things that are happening right now? I like to put it on paper. And then typically what I like to do is essentially just take the priorities, right? So what are the three things on that list that are the highest priority? And then I practice what's called time to think from the book, The Road Less Stupid
Hmm.
by Keith Cunningham. And essentially that is just a problem solving way to let your mind figure out those problems, and essentially, super easy practice. If you want to solve problems very quickly, what you want to do is write 3 questions down that you're going to answer. Put 45 minutes on a timer, turn off all your computers, turn off your phones. It's just paper, pen, and those questions. And all you're going to do is for that 45 minutes is write about those problems and those questions. And essentially, all you're trying to do is just do flow of consciousness. Allow what is happening in your brain just to come out on paper. And usually, in those moments, you're going to start to find the solutions coming through it. Or at the very worst or very least, you're going to stabilize your emotions to objective thinking rather than the subjective emotional thinking.
Dude, that was good. Love it. So what do you do then with the answer?
Then it's outlining, right? So I'm very much a reverse engineering person. So once you have the outcome that you need, it's going, what are the 3 or 4 things that must be true in order for that solution to be accurate, right? And then once you have the 3 or 4 steps that make that solution accurate, then it's what steps under each one of those must be done in order to complete that main pillar, right? So then it's just fractional. Divide up the many tasks that you have that lead to the overall what we call needle movers in our company. Get those tasks planned out, and then it's just focusing on individual tasks, not solving the big problem. How do I just do this thing, then the next thing, then the next thing, and then ultimately all the little things will add up to the biggest needle being solved.
That's really cool. I love the way that you think here and how structured you are in your approach. So tell me, how do you usually structure your day as an entrepreneur? With so
Yeah,
many
so
fires happening. I mean, I'm sure you're very structured in the company as well, but as we talked about before, there's always some shit going on, right? So
yeah.
how do you go into your day? When do you start it? Do you have routines? How does it look like?
So in the very beginning of entrepreneurship, I was very disciplined and had a very structured morning routine. I was by nature, I'm not an organized person. I'm not a very disciplined person, and so I found that I actually needed the discipline to start getting my mindset in line and my behavior accurate to what I want it to be. Right now, I think there's a lot of in the entrepreneurship space right now. There's a lot of back and forth of morning routines are great, morning routines are stupid, and a lot of that gets just fed from different influencers saying different things, and then the cult of those influencers will just kind of repeat the same thing, right? I
Right.
think it is comes from a perfect understanding of who you actually are, self-awareness. What do you actually need? For me, in the beginning, I needed structure because
Mm.
I had to get myself in line, or else I would never last. So we train our company this. We use what we call just essentially our weekly map, and that leads to daily maps. Weekly map is 3 to 4 max needle movers. These are things that actually move the company forward or move an account forward, right? So it's just 3 to 4 things, no long lists, 3 to 4 things. Then on your daily maps, essentially what you do is after you've had your weekly, it is exactly what I just kind of walked through of reverse engineering of this needle mover. What 3 things, 4 things must be true in order for that needle to actually get moved. And then the week is essentially just the breakup of the micro steps needed to complete those needle movers. But those are all that matters. Now, as entrepreneurs, we have so much other things that we do, right? 3 to 4 things is ridiculous. But the idea is needle movers, what actually progresses and moves forward, not or what are the tasks that I need to do. So what we do with those is we have a section called the radar. And radar is essentially where you can just brain dump every micro task or random thing that you know you need to get done. So then what you do in your days is you will set aside a time either in the afternoon or whatever someone wants to put it. For me, it's afternoons because my morning times are more focused. And so those are needle movers. Afternoons, I will typically have a 45-minute to an hour block every day for radar items, for the random things that don't actually move a company forward, but do need to get done. And that's how we continuously do it. And then each week you make sure you have at least a 3 to 4 hour gap for what we call buffer, which is just the when things come up, those are your times to be able to work on that stuff or needle mover tasks that you didn't get to complete earlier in the week, and you can move it to that time.
That's great. I love that. You know what's super interesting? Well, just one question about this. Is that working for you? Do you actually do it this way most days?
Yep. Yeah, I've been doing it for 5 years now. And
Fascinating.
so, he's even example right here on my desk. That's my weeklies. That's the daily
Cool.
map of the week.
Cool.
That's my big three right here. And so it's been something I've been doing for 5 years now.
I love that. I love that. You're very disciplined here. I do the same. If you look at my calendar, it looks similar, right? Very similar, actually. Interesting, right? Just that I typically start my mornings, well, after I do like my other stuff and like getting the kids ready and like doing workout and whatever. But then when I focus on work, I usually start with the one thing that I define as most important, right? The
Yeah.
biggest needle mover in your
Yep.
terminology, right? What happens then usually is that since my mind is fully on that, I get into a flow. And usually, until I have to start the podcast now, if I hadn't had the podcast, I would just go on until the evening, right? And I don't stop. So I don't get people who tell me they can't focus, right? And they are always doing like the little tasks. For me, it's like the
Yeah.
opposite. I only do the big
Yeah.
task, right? And then the
Yep.
little ones never happen. So for anyone listening to this, in theory, I think what you do is perfect. And if you can pull it off, that's mastery, right? For
Yeah.
me, I kind of have to squeeze a day in where I'll do all the admin stuff and the not
Yeah.
so needle mover kind of things. Interesting. All
Yeah.
right, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the biggest thing for a lot of entrepreneurs right now is like we're all busy, and so busy isn't the thing. It's how do you be effective, right? And so
Exactly.
we allow ourselves to be like, hey, if you're just waiting for that moment where you don't have anything to do, it's never going to happen. We're entrepreneurs. The work never ends. It ends for your employees, but for us, there's never an end. And so the goal is how do I be the most effective possible and remove all of the busyness as you can, because if you don't protect the effectiveness, that's when you're going to be in a business where it's been 3 years and we've never grown and we've never done anything.
All right, so we're over time already, but let me put you in the hot seat for like a minute or two and ask you about agency growth because you have been very successful with your agency. Obviously, everybody listening to this, as per usual, if you're interested in more details about what our guests here do, please check them out. Right? I'm sure you have to meet some criteria to be able to work with Ashton here, but check out his agency. So being one of the fastest growing agencies, at least in the US market, right? What would be like your top three tips for people who want to grow an agency in the marketing space?
Tip number one, team is everything. You have to get high quality people into your company, people that you can trust, people that also have a high level of expertise. But you have to train those people. Thing number two is develop a war chest. You have to have cash to be able to stack for when times get rough. If you think everything's always going to be great or continue growing all the times, it does not happen. And then the final thing, decide what you want. What took me too long in my company was I was building a company I knew how to build, but I never asked myself the question is this the company I want to build? And this is a game that has no defined rules. It is your game, but you have to know what game you want to play. And if you don't decide what game you want to play, it will decide for you. And you'll see a lot of areas in your life not turn out the way you want it, or you'll end up depressed and wonder why. And you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't decide the game you actually want to play, then you're going to lose.
Absolutely. I 100% endorse this statement. Thank you very much, Ashton Shanks. It was a great pleasure having you on Entrepreneur's Life with me. Thank you.
Absolutely, brother. Anytime.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, please follow my channels if you want to see more exciting entrepreneurs on the podcast. All right. That was it for today. Thank you very much for listening in. And thanks again, Ashton, for being with us. Bye.
Absolutely.